LBC's been given exclusive access to Teesworks in northeast England, and we're seeing it just before demolition work begins for it to become the UK's largest freeport. These old steel manufacturing sites are going to be taken down and blown up, making way for some of the world's largest investors. The Tees Valley Mayor Ben Houchen, who has just been re-elected with a huge 75% of the vote, says he hopes to attract some of the world's biggest companies to Teesside.
What we have behind us is the Raker blast furnace, and a lot of people see that, especially with national media historically, they've used that as the silhouette to signify kind of Teesside and in the industrial north. And the blast furnace itself was there to not make steel, albeit we talk about steel making in Teesside. Actually, Teesside originated with the ironworks. And what the Raker blast furnace does is it processes the iron ore, and then we've got these amazing railway tracks that still exist right across the 4,500 acres of the site, because the iron ore would be produced in here, and then actually it would go into what they call torpedoes, which were just big torpedo-like containers, and then it would be rolled along the railway line right across to the other end of the site. And that actually on the other end of the site is where the iron would be used in the steel making process to create the steel. Because Teesside was built on actually iron making. If you go back to the early 1800s.
So we're now here at what's called the Boss plant.
Yeah, so all those pictures that people might have seen of the big ladles and people inside and the hot molten steel was produced in the Boss plant. And that's where a lot of the steel making processes went on. But again, as with everything else, it has a lifespan, and we'll be demolishing that to make way for new investment.
And this place is steeped in history in Redcar and Teesside, isn't it? And when the the SSI site closed 6 years ago, it was devastating for local people here.
Oh, it really was. I mean, they say the thousands of jobs that were lost. I mean, this itself, you can't do it justice by just looking at it on a camera. You can't really do it justice being studied. You've got to be inside it. I mean, it's 90 metres tall. It's taller than Westminster Abbey. We call the main body of it the cathedral because it has a cathedral-like quality to it. And that is the most difficult thing for us to demolish, because over the years it's been custom made, it's been changed inside. The size of the girders are beyond belief of how big they are to be able to actually blow it up and knock it down. So it's a huge technical feat to be able to get it into a site to create new investment and jobs. And I do think if we get this right, people will look back at the closure of the steelworks as a new dawn for the future of our region, where we can look forward to new technologies, better paid, quality jobs for local people on a much larger scale.
And you're local yourself. Is that part of what drives you?
Yeah, of course it is. I wouldn't be here spending every day, every hour of every day that God sends to make sure that we deliver for local people. Because I mean, this is where I'm from. This is where I want to live for the rest of my life. And I want to be able to walk down the street and be proud of what we've been able to contribute back to our local community. What I don't want is to walk down the street and for people to look at you as if we've created some sort of white elephant, or we failed to grasp the opportunity that was put in front of us. I mean, the Houchen family on my the paternal line has been in Middlesbrough since the 1820s. I mean, we are Teesside through and through, and this is my home, and this is why I want to give back to what I think is the best place on earth.
So what's this part going to be where we're stood right now?
So this is hopefully going to be Net Zero Teesside, which is a consortium of all of the huge oil and gas companies across the world. So Total, ENI, BP, Equinor, and it's led by BP as the project lead, so they're running the project on their behalf. And the idea is that basically you've got an 80-acre footprint, which is where we're stood, and it runs from the fence over there. It will then run behind you, then it runs in parallel with where the pipework runs all the way along, and then it will run up to the side in an imaginary line to where that very tall white column is. That's in effect the footprint of the CCUS plant, the carbon capture and storage plant. And it's going to cost approximately £4 billion just to build, and it'll capture 10 million tonnes, which is the equivalent of 3 million homes per year, which is fantastic because it decarbonises the chemical industry.
So Teesside's really going to be at the heart of net zero and clean energy.
If I achieve my plans, Teesside will be the world capital of green energy.
So this will become a new key.
Yeah, so we, as well as obviously having the freeport, we need to be able to make sure that we can import and export to the rest of the world. And so you've got an old quay here that's been disused for decades now and has never had a use for a long, long time. So this will get demolished. We'll be taking this out of the river. And then the new quay will go from where the red and white tower is, right at the far end, and it'll run right the way along here. The quay will actually be built on the land, so you can see there it won't be built in the river, but it'll be built on the land. That starts in September, and then it'll run right the way along to where the pylons are at the far end. So just over a kilometre when it's fully complete. First phase is 450 metres, and that allows the likes of GE to be able to export their offshore wind blades into the things like Dogger Bank, which is just 80 miles off the northeast coast, which will be, when complete in the next 3 years, will be the world's largest offshore wind farm.
And this is going to be the UK's largest freeport. What are, for people who don't know, what are the benefits of a freeport?
Well, there are two parts. There's a customs part, which if you want to import something into the UK, you often pay things like customs tariffs and duties, and VAT gets paid on the import of raw materials. Often, some things are tariff-free. And then what you do in a freeport is you don't have to pay those things. So if you're importing something from outside of the UK into a freeport, you don't have to pay those things for as long as they're in the freeport. So this is why we've got the largest freeport, because we can import things from across the world. We can create manufacturing and processing plants on the site. So you're in the freeport. You turn it into a finished product, which creates good quality, well-paid jobs on the site, so good local jobs. And then you can re-export it without it touching the UK for those tax purposes. So you never have to pay the tariffs and duties. So that's one aspect. It's a customs process. And then the second aspect is a tax zone. So the tax benefits of a freeport are very much incentivised around trying to build large-scale manufacturing that are labour-intensive. So if you look at things like capital allowances, business rates, employers' national insurance contributions, investors don't have to pay those things for a period of time. Now, they are time limited, so after a few years they will be paying those like any other business, but it's the thing that's going to supercharge an investment here rather than it going elsewhere, because it lowers the cost. And GE is a great example, right? I mean, GE have an existing factory in Cherbourg where they build offshore wind blades, and their decision was between expanding an existing factory or creating a brand new one here in Teesside in the UK. And the reason they came to the UK, and the final reason that they came to the UK, was because of the freeport. Without the freeport, it wouldn't have been as cost effective to do it here that it would have been in France, which tipped the balance in our favour.
So realistically, how much better is that post-Brexit than how this operated before Brexit when we were in the EU?
It's huge. It's a huge selling point. We don't have free zones like we do in the UK anywhere else in Europe. People will tell you that they do. They don't. They're glorified bonded warehouses. You know, the UK freeport policy comes with genuine tax incentives.
And so this is what the site is going to look like, these huge flat plains of land ready for some of the world's biggest investors to come and build on.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the first parcel of land that we started on. It's 80 acres in size. We're continuing to develop out the back end of it. But ultimately, the whole site is going to end up looking like this. It's going to be completely flat, ready for investors with planning permission, where they can come and physically start building tomorrow if they've got their plans.
And this part of land in particular, you say, is about 40 acres big, but the whole site in itself is huge, isn't it? What does that size compare to?
Well, the site's huge. I mean, it's the equivalent of 6 times the size of the City of London. It's twice the size, I think, of Gibraltar, maybe 1.5 times the size of Gibraltar. You know, I don't work in acres, so we try and come up with some, I think you were saying earlier, just over 2,500 football pitches.
And there's so much history on this site. You can see it right there where we've just been, the Boss plant. You plan to celebrate that history and incorporate it as part of your plans. How are you going to do that?
Well, yeah, of course we do. We've got 2 fantastic museums already in the East Cleveland Iron Mining Museum. We've got the Kirkleatham Museum that celebrates steel. And, you know, we're going to try and protect and keep some of the old assets, whether it might be the ladle or one of the ladles from the Boss plant. It might be you know, other parts of the site that we'll keep and we'll put into the museums. We've also got something called the Black Path that runs right from the Cleveland Hills right the way through the site. We'll be opening that back up to the public, and we're not along the way. We might have some old points of heritage for people. We've 3D rendered the whole site as well. So hopefully we'll be uploading that online so people could download that and they can turn it into, you know, 3D models. We're going to turn it into a scale model. You could even turn it into a computer game level if you really wanted to, because that's the data that we're going to be able to drag. And it'll be great for people because there'll be certain people that won't be able to come to the site for whatever reason, but from the comfort of their own home, they could take a virtual reality tour of what it used to look like. So yeah, we're trying to make sure that we celebrate our heritage, but at the same time put at the forefront that this is about the future generations, and creating the jobs that we sorely need them to serve. Did
lockdown impact any of this progress, and could a delay to easing lockdown impact anything for here and the wider area too?
Well, no, it didn't. I mean, the very beginning of the first lockdown, where everything stopped for about 3 or 4 weeks, it obviously had a disruption because construction wasn't allowed to continue at that time, and then the government quite quickly said that construction could. So from that point onwards, it hasn't had an impact whatsoever. The nature of where we are with the demolition, the clearance and the site preparation means that we're actually being able to get on full steam ahead. And even if there's a slight delay, which hopefully there won't be, then we won't see any impact on what we're trying to do. I mean, that construction phase means that we can get on full steam ahead and not lose any time.
Fantastic. And my final question, I think, has to be, Looking at all of this that you've achieved and you will achieve, Teesside will be on the global stage. The Conservative Party have got to be absolutely thrilled with you. Where do they see you within the next 5 years? Have they got you earmarked for Westminster maybe?
I have no idea. If they have, they haven't told me about it. I mean, I would kind of dispute what you say to the extent that we haven't achieved that much yet. We've made some very good progress, the freeport, even the likes of getting the GE factory to be built here. But if that's all we achieve on a site like this, then we have failed. And the next 3-4 years of my term, or the next 3 years of my term, we'll be making sure that we don't fail to deliver on that. So yeah, I mean, we've made great progress, but there's still a huge amount to do. There's still a long way to go. And that's where my focus is. I mean, if you want to go and ask Boris, he might give you an answer. He's not spoken to me about it.
If there was an opportunity for you to take on a ministerial role, a top-level role in government, after seeing all this success that you've had, how would you feel about that?
Well, to do that, I'd have to not be the Mayor of the Tees Valley anymore, and it's the best job I've ever had, and I couldn't think of anything better to do. So hopefully I'll be here for as long as local people continue to vote for me.